Hi everyone, it's Sunday, time for another video about the IXEG 737-300. I figured we have to pass the time somehow until the new flight simulator comes out, and why not fly the good old 737 for a while. And today we are heading towards London, and we're out over the channel already here, the North Sea, and are going to fly the famous, they used to call it the Logan, or the Lambourne arrival, now it's called the Logan arrival, and I have that set up. But before we start, I want to show you one thing that I've been working on. So I'm going to pause the simulator real quick and enter the settings menu here and go to joystick. And I've spent a couple mornings to add a lot of commands that you can map to your joystick or keys or home built cockpit or whatever. They're all under the IXEG tab, and then we have some IXEG 733, and then we have FMC, autopilot, and so on. And you can look at the list. I'm going to scroll down here slowly, and maybe you spot something that you want to have mapped. You can tell me in our forums, and I'll get to it. But I have mapped really most switches here, all these autopilot and EHSI. Most of those were already done. Some were not mapped correctly. I fixed those, and see, we got electric now, disconnecting the generators and connecting them, and I added all the engine anti-ice and wing anti-ice and pedostatic heat, a wiper, low, fast, and so on, the below glide slope inhibit, those push buttons on the instrument panel. I added all the lights, so you can turn on the landing lights, inboard, outboard, position lights, everything with keyboard or joystick button commands. And again, if there's something that you want to see, this is where it stops here. If that's something where that you want me to add, please let me know. Some of these up here I haven't mapped. Windows, heat, the galley power, stuff like that, battery switch, because you only need those once during the flight if you prepare the flight. But those switches that you will need frequently, like the lights and the anti-ice and stuff like that, I have mapped. But if there's something that you would like, please let me know, and I'll try to add it in time for the next patch. Now, today I want to show you how to fly a holding, and I picked the airport of London. Let's keep going, because there's really no airport in the world where you used to have holdings as regularly as London. It has really improved in the last years. I'm not sure what they did. I don't think the traffic decreased really. Of course, now during the COVID crisis it did. But when I started flying in the late 90s or mid 90s, we flew to London, and we always had to hold at least 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. That was totally normal, even on a sunny, calm day. And you would get to take fuel accordingly. And we still do when we fly to London, because London-Heathrow is like a well-oiled machine. And as long as everything works, everything works. But as soon as there's something out of the ordinary, then things really get bogged down quick. Now the ATC controllers in London are probably the best in the world. Don't want to step on anyone's toes, but they are really good, professional, efficient, and always polite, even if things get hectic. That cannot be said about some ATC controllers in other parts of the world. But nothing but good experience with the Heathrow controllers. But again, if weather is not good, or if there's an emergency or something like that, naturally all the inbound traffic can really get backlogged, and then you'll have to fly a holding. And as you know, the holding in our 737 is not implemented yet. We have the hold page, and this is where you would enter the hold, but if you do, nothing happens. So you have to fly the hold manually, and I'm going to show you how to. This is something, or a big complaint that comes up again and again, because if you fly IVEO or VATSIM or Pilot Edge, I guess you do get holdings assigned quite frequently, and you want to be ready to fly those. So we're going to fly the arrival now, and of course I have the Navigraph set here. You can see Tom worked on reading the restrictions better, And this is still a little bogus here. It says Sabre above flight level 0, which, yes, makes sense. Good to be above flight level 0, and flight level 160 or below, that's also valid. And the next restriction we have here is Logan, that's flight level 250 or below. And you can see a gross weight. I picked a higher gross weight to not make it too easy for myself. It's easy with 46 tons because that's what I have my little table here tuned to, but today we want to be a little more heavy, so I picked 50 tons gross weight, so we are 4 tons heavier than what my table suggests, so we have to allow for that. And we are currently cruising at 290, and we want to descend to 250 by Logan. So let's look at our table here, and you can see 240 would be 74, and 280 would be 86. So that's that's the we have to descend 4,000 feet. So that's the 4,000 feet here, and it's the same altitude range. So this does make sense. So that's 11 miles approximately, and since we are a little heavier, we want to add 2% to that. So 11 miles plus 2% is still pretty much 11 miles. So let's start the descent 12 miles ahead, or even a little earlier, just to allow for, the plane needs a second to reduce thrust and start the descent. We're at 14 miles right now. I'm going to put in, ATC gave us the clearance. They said, descent level 150 when ready. And of course, they expect you to heed the restrictions. So we're going to put in 150. And now we're at 12 miles. So let's hit level change and start down. And let's see how that works out. Now I'm going to show you a little trick in a second. If you are not sure that you're going to make a restriction, how you can check. You can see the, we call it the banana, the green arc here. This is the prediction where the plane thinks at the current ground speed and the current vertical speed, it will hit whatever you have dialed in here. Now this, we know where we're going to hit 150 now, more or less. But that's not what's interesting. Interesting is where we'll hit 250. So we have set 150, the ATC clearance, in our little reminder here. So now we can just cheat for a second and put in 250. And we don't want to wait too long with that because otherwise the plane might capture. But you see now it says 250 is going to be right here by Logan, which is perfectly on the money. So we can go back to 150, which was the original clearance, and still be confident. And you can see our VNAV calculation is humming along. Take that with a grain of salt, or with at least 2 tablespoons of salt, but we just double checked, and we can also see 3 miles to go, 1,000 feet. That's a good sign that we'll make it 250 or below. And we start now the turn towards Lambourne, and we have 1 mile to go now, 200 feet. That's going to work out beautifully. And of course, this is always a little game of chicken, because the controller is going to watch you on the scope, and he says, yeah, they're going to make it, are they going to make it? Can I scold them for busting my altitude limit? And of course, he is relying on you making that, because there may be traffic coming above the 250, maybe at 260, and you want to be at least 1,000 feet from that traffic. So if you cannot make that, sometimes you screw up, you miscalculate, but then it's very important to call the controller right away and say, hey, I'm not going to make that restriction, and then he will give you alternate instruction or can turn away the other traffic. Now the next restriction we want to make is Sabre 160 or below, and again, we can check here, that's 52.4, and we want to check at 22,000. That would be 69. So 52 to 69, that's 15, 17 miles approximately. So when we cross 22,000, we want to be at 17 miles from Sabre, and Tripo is 12, and there's another 5 to go to Sabre. So that's just about going to work out. So we can let it run, and we'll see as we get closer if we need to, do something. Of course, you can always increase speed. That will really lose altitude quick, but often you have a restriction when you arrive. They say, maintain speed 280, or sometimes what they really love to do here in London is they tell you now reduce speed to 50, and now you planned your descent with 280 knots, but you need to reduce to 250, and then you can always tell them, I won't be able to make Sabre below 160 then, and then they say, oh, that's fine, then just turn left heading 180, and they show you the North Sea, and so better pull that speed brake and try to make it work. Now here's the British countryside coming into view, and of course when you fly to London you have little time to enjoy the view, and you're pretty busy listening to instructions. You don't want to be called twice and be a hindrance. You can see that the FMC thinks you're a tad high, so we're not going to play it too close. We're going to increase speed to 90 here for a second, and you can see as the plane is going to the new speed, it really increases the vertical speed here for a minute, and that helps you to get on the path. Increasing speed works good in gaining temporary higher rate of descent, and of course also descending at 290 you will have a little bit higher rate of descent than at 280, but again when you need to slow down later on you need a little more mileage, so that works against you then. But now you can see the green arc is resting pretty much on Sabre, and the green arc is where we'll hit 150, so the 160 below at Sabre should not be a problem at all, and you can always check about 1,000 feet is about 3 miles, so now we have 3.8 to go at 1,000 feet, so that's comfortable. We'll make that no problem. So we'll fly at 150 for a little bit on, and then we will expect holding overhead Lambourne. That's where you normally have to hold, and the holding overhead Lambourne as published is with left turns. And I'm going to show you how to enter that to the fixed page so you can fly the holding pattern in heading select and work with that. Now we're coming up at 150, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get vertical speed going and reduce the rate to 1,000. The last 1,000 feet before the assigned altitude, you don't want to barrel down at 2,000 feet per minute because that may trigger the TCAS on someone flying below. And it's good, or it's actually prescribed to descend the last 1,000 feet with not more than 1,000 feet per minute. They have a new TCAS standard coming. The new TCAS standard will know that, or will read what you have dialed in here, and it will knows that the plane will level off at 15,000 feet, or level 150 in this case. So it will reduce the envelope of triggering an RA or an alert in the plane below, but until that one is fielded with everyone, you have to descend or climb with only 1,000 feet per minute, reaching that assigned altitude. So now they say descent level 90 and expect holding overhead Lambourne. So we'll oblige, and they say reach level 90 by Lambourne, and you can see that's 5,000 feet, and again we can check here 10,000 to 15,000 would be about 33 to let's say 50, that's 18 miles, and we are not that far away, so we're going to start going down right away, and we'll see how that works out. I'm going to reduce the range here a little bit, and we may have to do some, doing a little trick or two to reach that in time. But we have 19 miles. That should be plenty of time, no sweat. And we can also reduce to 250 because you can see here this waypoint D083 Lima. That's a speed restriction waypoint. We want to fly 250 once we get, to it, and then afterwards we need to fly 250 or not faster than 250, so that will also stretch our descent a little bit. Now getting closer to the holding area, it's always a good idea to turn on your landing lights to increase visibility, lots of planes overhead the holding. And I'm going to copy Lambourne, and I'll put it into my fixed page. And Lambourne is 115.6, so I have picked the right one. And what you want to do is you want to add the inbound course, and of course the inbound is 263, so the opposite is 083. So we'll put in radial 083. Now coincidentally, that is the one that we are on, so there's not much gain, but if you do that, we need to reduce to 50. If you do that on a wild holding pattern that is not on the airway, so to say, then you really want to have the inbound course set. That's very important. And the second radial you want to set is the one that gives you the abeam position when you turn outbound from the holding pattern and go abeam. So 083 plus 90, that's 173. So I'm going to set that one, 173 as well. And you can see here it is. Now you have a little angle, and this angle describes your holding pattern area. It's going to be right here on the left side. And I also want to give me a distance indication where I want to re-intercept the inbound course. And you can see if I fly the holding pattern at 210 knots at this altitude, that's going to be about 240 knots ground speed. That's 4 miles a minute. We want to do 1 minute patterns. So I'm going to make a circle around my holding pattern at 4 miles. So this is pretty much the point where I want to re-intercept my path, and then have 1 minute to fly until I go overhead Lambourne again. So 2,000 feet to go. This is just about going to work out, but of course I want to be at 210 when I enter my holding pattern. So I'm going to use the speed brake, go to the flight detent, not more than that. Don't go to up, it's not allowed. We just go to the flight detent, and I'm telling ATC, hey, I'll be reaching Lambourne a little over 190, and they say, yeah, that's fine, there's no one above you right now. So I let them know as well. If they said that would be a problem, then I would just barrel down to 90 to make the restriction, and then just accept going into the turn a little faster. Of course, there's a speed limit. If you're below 14,000, the speed limit is 230. You shouldn't be faster than that in the holding pattern, because otherwise you may leave the holding area. I'm going to reduce range a little bit further and go to the center map so I can see a little better what's going on. And now I'm going to prepare the turn by turning my heading bucket to the left. And when I get overhead Lambourne, I'm going to push heading, and then I will start flying the outbound turn. Now here we go, pushing heading, and that starts my turn. And I'm going to put in the speed brake again as I'm reaching 90. Yeah, I'm a little high on the descent rate here. So here we go, turning outbound. Now, if you have wind in the holding pattern, this complicates things a little bit. Now I have no wind set up. That makes it a little easy. I'm just going to disconnect heading select here so the plane will keep turning. And I don't want it to, go level wings, but I'm going to set the heading to the downwind heading, so to say, and I'm going to engage heading select again, so now it can fly downward. Now I want to get ready as I cross this green arrow or the green line I made here. That's when I'm abeam Lambourne, and that's when I want to start timing, so I can time my inbound turn. It's easy with no wind. I'm going to fly 1 minute out and turn, and then fly 1 minute in. And since I do the two turns at the same speed and the same track over ground, they're going to be symmetrical, so this is easy. If you have a crosswind, let's say a wind blowing us outbound from the holding or inbound to the holding, then now get ready for the crossing, and here we go now. So now the clock is running for 1 minute. If you fly with a crosswind, then you want to fly 3 times the wind correction angle. You will, when you fly inbound, you will know maybe you need to lead by 5 degrees, and then when you are flying outbound, you want to lead by 15 degrees towards the wind. Why 3 times? Because you get blown away by the wind when you do the turn for about 1 minute. You get blown away by the wind when you do the outbound leg for about 1 minute, and then another minute when you turn inbound. So that's 3 minutes that you get blown away by the wind. So you want to allow 3 times the actual wind correction angle. So this is what you want to do, and that should get you, when you turn, it should get you onto the center line pretty well. Now I'm getting ready here for my turn inbound. 1 minute is up, so turn around, and we can go to 263 already. Oops, 262, 263. Now let's see, that should work out pretty good. And of course, the first holding pattern that you do is always, well, when we learned to fly holding patterns in our F-33 Bonanzas, we would do the first one was pretty much just to figure out where's the wind. You had no IRS, you had no idea what the wind really was, just a wild idea. And then you would tune your holding patterns, and by the time that you flew the second or third one, then you would have it nailed down. You knew the wind correction angle, you knew how to adjust the inbound and outbound timing, because right now if we had a tailwind now on the inbound leg, then of course we would need to extend the outbound leg a little bit to allow, because you have a higher ground speed when you fly towards the fix. But of course, if you have wind the other way, you would make that shorter and so on. So the first one was really just to get your bearings and then get your wind correction angles and your timing adjustments, and after that it worked okay. But really, if you fly holding patterns, no one is going to expect you to fly that within like a few seconds of precision. And now that we are inbound again, I'm going to reset the timer and start it again. And this is where the real measurement starts. I want to see if I fly 1 minute until I'm in Lambourne again, and that is the holding pattern, because that's how it's defined. 1 minute of inbound flight to the holding pattern, then turn outbound, and then inbound again. Now, again, as I said, if you have wind blowing you around, there's a lot of leeway in these holding patterns. Don't fly them at 300 knots. There's certain speed limits. You can look that up on the internet. 230 below 14,000, 240 above, and then if you fly really high holding patterns, it goes up even more. But often you can also ask ADC, you can say, hey, can I fly 2 minute holding patterns? We do that all the time because it saves fuel. The less you turn, the less fuel you need, and ideally, they let you know ahead of time so you can fly 210 for the last 100 miles, and that's better than flying 210s for 20 minutes in the holding pattern. Here we come up again on Lambourne and turn. See, 1 minute, that worked out pretty good, and we fly the next turn outbound. And of course, you need to pay attention. It's more convenient if you have LNAV tracking you in the hold, and you can drink coffee and look outside and see Hyde Park and see what Prince Harry, well, he's not here anymore, but what the Queen is doing. But since we don't have that yet, you can fly the holding pattern manually. And if you get these little helper lines here, it really lets you know where you are, when you need to start your timing, and how to adjust your tracking. Well, I hope that this was enlightening, as the guy in The Simpsons said, the head of the quickie mark. That episode maybe is one of my favorites. But I'll see you again next week, and then we'll continue and maybe do a little RNAV approach into London-Heathrow.